Hi, this is Judy with my thought for the day for Christian single people. I would like to discuss relationships and some of the obvious ways that we make mistakes. I've made a few of my own. So to begin this discussion, I want to talk about our design. God designed us, and He designed us in His image, and He designed us thirsty for love. So when we're born, we are actually just thirsty to be held, to be touched, to be affirmed, to be loved. And I'm a nurse, and I have seen little kids born into situations where maybe mom was very dysfunctional, a drug user, and I've seen those kids be sent home with those moms just to be returned some weeks later with failure to thrive syndrome. What is happening with the child is that the child has not been touched. They've not been shown love. So we're born into the world absolutely thirsty for love. That's by design. We were also designed to have parents that raised us, to validate us, to love us, to coach us, to demonstrate for us what true love looks like. And in receiving that love, it validates us as people and prepares us to go out into the world, single men, single women, to find a mate, all emotionally prepared to choose well and to make good decisions. I have had the privilege of knowing people who have had that storyline. I am not one of the ones who had that storyline. And secondly, we were designed to enter into a marriage relationship, to enjoy all of the benefits of the giving, the receiving, and the joy of being a mate and a lover with somebody, both building a life together so we weren't alone. We were designed for that too. I'm going to put a capstone statement on what I just said by saying we were designed for a perfect world. Well, unfortunately, as I have alluded to the situation in my life, we often do not get perfection in this world. In fact, we don't ever get it. But in the worst case scenarios, we are subjected to abuse and neglect. In the upbringing that I had, which was the home of a minister, my siblings and I were not validated as having any worth. In the day and age that my dad was a minister, it was commonly understood that the minister was put into the flock to lead the flock to God, and that his children would be taken care of by God. That was actually taught. When I was in utero, my mom was carrying me. Dad and mom were expecting me, the first child in the ministry. They'd had 3 other kids. And when my dad's boss, who was the head of our denomination, came around to see how he was doing in his newly appointed church, my dad reportedly told him, well, my wife and I are expecting. And that man looked at him and said, Norman, you were appointed by God to lead your flock, not to be going out making babies. And so what he essentially said, and what my parents lined up with, was your children lack significance. They're kind of in the way of the ministry. I spent some time on the phone with his sibling today talking about how all 5 of us are in agreement. We were raised to feel like we did not have worth and did not have validation. So we take our broken selves out into the world and try to find a mate. And I want to talk in particular to the women who are single out there. There's something I've come to understand. There are cultures in the world right now where the girl cannot get married until she has a dowry. So the father, over a period of years from the time she's very young forward, puts treasures into this dowry, so that when it comes time for her to be released from the father's home and marry and go into her husband's home, she's bringing wealth, the wealth that the father gave her, into her husband's home. Well, even though in the West we don't practice that particular material dowry, we still are supposed to receive from our fathers an emotional dowry. The treasures that our dads are supposed to give us is validation that we are desirable, that as girls, we are worth the very, very best that we can possibly get in the way of love and in the way of marriage, that we're desirable, that we should hold out for the very best because our dads treat us that we are the very best. So many of us young women, myself included, go out into the world. We feel like we've been thrown into an open ocean in an inner tube because we haven't had the substantial underpinnings of a loving environment in which we were raised. And worst of all, our fathers either abused us, God forbid, or ignored us or lectured us or were stern with us. But the overriding message that we got was, as girls and as women, we were not worth much at all. That was me, and at age 24, I plummeted into a very deep depression. Now let me tell you what some of the mistakes were I made. In trying to develop a relationship with a man, I had the mindset, even though I wouldn't have told you I did, but I had the mindset that a man could heal me and cure me and make me feel like something. But what happened was, when I went out into the world with an empty dowry, not ever having been affirmed as a girl, all I seemed to attract were guys that were worse off than me. They were needier than me, they were more messed up than me, and I found myself being partnered in some sort of emotional relationship where I was being absolutely drained. And if I gave in to their passions and into their pressures, I ended up being used. That happens a lot out there. Men will put sex very high up on the totem pole, and if you're a needy girl, they'll see you coming. Boy, I'll tell you, that was a terrible trap to get into. I have been relieved to find out through different healing seminars I've been through that it is totally natural to sexualize our love needs when our parenting was very poor. I did some of that. I really did. But the other thing that I did that is a terrible mistake is that I would say to myself, okay, I've got friends. What I really want is a lover, because I was sexualizing my love needs. So I would find guys that were willing to move very fast in the relationship. My first husband and I had known each other 3 months when we got married. When I married him, he was distant from me. He'd hardly touch me. I felt like a totally discarded piece of trash, the same way my father treated me. What surfaced 6 months into the marriage is he had lied on several issues with me before getting into the marriage, and it totally threw a blockade between him and me in the intimacy area. And when the truth came out that he'd had a very serious drug past, and that in fact he'd spent time in jail for holding up a convenience mart to get money for his drug habit, it was devastating. There were also things about his sexual past that he lied about. And what surfaced as I went on in life with him was he continued to have addictive behaviors. That led ultimately to the dissolution of the marriage 10 years later. It was a horrible, horrible time to go through all of that and to see him not choose the path of health. So I was celibate for 12 years. I actually spent some time in ministry and then thought I'd give it a try out on the dating sites. I met a guy that would pray like he was just passionately in love with God, and he would just pray the ceiling down. He knew the Bible. We'd have Bible studies long distance. I flew out to meet him after we'd only known each other through telephone calls about 2.5 months, and I was date raped by him. He was from India, and he was a very controlling and very messed up guy who came from an abusive past himself. Well, after I got date raped, I felt just terrible. I did marry him. It was the worst, absolutely worst mistake of my life to move that quickly and to find myself in a terrible, horrible, abusive, controlling, down-putting, just terrible human being. Somebody that would embarrass me in public, somebody that almost demanded that he be the one to choose how many times I could breathe in a minute. It was absolutely the worst thing that ever happened to me, and that marriage lasted about 7 months. So now I'm back to what have I learned from that? What am I learning? I want to share those tidbits with you because I believe there are some men and women out there who would make very good spouses. But you've got to back up in the processes that you have tried so far and determine in your heart that you're not going to take the wrong path. One of the things you learn in the Song of Solomon, which is the ultimate biblical commentary on man and woman's love together, is that she says of her beloved, he is my friend. He is my friend. So one of the things I'm going to pass off to you today and let you think on, and I'm going to have more tidbits next week, is that take your time in a relationship. Don't do what I've done. Now, I am very fortunate because I prayed about this. I said, God, what is wrong with me? God has sent numerous men my way. A lot of them are married, but that's good because they're off the plate. They're not threatening. They're not available. So guess what I'm learning to do? be friends with a man. What does that look like? What do men talk about? What can they tell me about myself? What can I learn about relationships? And I've become friends with couples that are healthy. And I'll sit at their dinner table and listen to them talk. I'll joke with them. I'll watch them do life from kind of a high standpoint, just kind of looking in through a peephole, if you will. But I learn things. I talk with the wives. What does this marriage produce for you? How did you get in a healthy marriage? What does marriage look like? They tell me about the thrills. They tell me about the agonies of being in a relationship with this man, but what love actually looks like. And it's something I needed to do because guess what? My parents did not produce good role models for me. My mother did not role model for me what a true woman looks like. If you came from homes that were dysfunctional, where you felt berated, where you felt uncared for, unattended to, then I would advise before you go jump into a new relationship, get to know married couples, get to know the opposite sex as friends, and take things really, really slow. You'll learn so much, and God will be honored in that because He will be able to show you things on the slow ride He couldn't show you on the fast ride. Thank you for listening.